Hey you guys, Fat Lizard Boy here, back at it again with the what ifs. So, I'm going to be uploading 2 what ifs every single day. They're going to be 2 separate what ifs. I'm doing what if Deku can take souls or whatever, right? And this one is going to be what if Deku could cause atomic blasts. So, how this is going to work is Deku's quirk is kind of strange. He can actively release plutonium atoms and then split them on command, causing atomic blasts. But he can control the blast, so he can release like the exact same amount that was in the bombs they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? And split all those atoms, which would make it even more powerful than the bombs that were actually used. But then he can control the blast to make it make it like so small it wouldn't even make a fly move or anything. He can control the radiation that comes off of it, and he naturally emits radiation of his own. Well, it more or less just stays inside of him, and he can release it. He also has uranium inside of him. It's in his blood, and he can split that to create fire. Green fire that he can shoot out of his hands. And then he can also just throw out liquid uranium out of his hands that is on fire, and that shit burns super hot. So basically, Deku is the most powerful being in the entire universe and can kill the entire world if he got angry enough. The downsides of this are that his quirk, if he gets too angry, his anger naturally builds up radiation. And that radiation will cause... This is not... I don't think this is how it actually works in real life, but in his body, the radiation will cause the uranium to split. And when that uranium splits, it creates energy. That causes more uranium to split. So it just splits and splits and splits until he gets too angry, right? And if he gets too angry, all that energy can't just be stored inside of him. So it will release, if he can either choose to release it, or he can just not release it at all until it just finally, to where his body forces itself to release it. At its maximum, I'm going to say, unless he trains it, with no training at all, it is as powerful as the world's current most powerful bomb, or atomic bomb, or whatever. The Tsar Bomba. If you don't know what that thing is, go look that bitch up. It's scary, to say the least. That thing, yeah. So, we're not going to really... Deku being born, it doesn't matter. He had almost the identical same life. We're going to go ahead and skip to when he's 4. Deku had never shown signs of having a quirk, right, Ninko? I was going to take him to the quirk doctor after school one day, right? Bakugo had just got his quirk. But when Bakugo got it, it wasn't all that strong. But, it was still very strong, but it wasn't like it was in the anime. It's going to be like it was in the anime, just not currently. So, they're outside, they're at school one day, and they're outside, right? And the reason why is because All Might offered to stop by and meet some of the students and sign autographs and stuff, because he didn't really have anything to do and the school asked him to. So he agreed to it, right? So they're outside one day, and then they hear someone yell at All Might, right? Also, I'm also going to say this one. Bakugo has a younger brother who's 3 years old and looks up to Bakugo. Deku has an older sister who's 6 years old. His older sister's name is Rachel. And the reason why she's called Rachel is because Asashi was born in America. Born and raised in America. So, he moved down to Japan because he had a business-like job, right? And because, he was born and raised in America and he had to go down to Japan, he bumped into Inko. Then they bumped into each other again, if you know what I mean, in bed. Wink, wink. And so they had Rachel. And Sashi wanted to name his daughters, because he always liked the name Rachel. Her quirk is that she can use uranium and just split the atoms in only uranium. And basically just make fire from it. She can't make radiation. But she can make this super hot flame. It's not as hot as Deku's. Because Deku is the hottest boy ever. So, Inko is standing... It's not Inko. So, Rachel is standing a little ways away from the group when this happens. When these guys start shouting. So, but... Okay, yeah. Rachel is. And this guy walks up, right? And there's a group of guys. And they start shouting at All Might, right? All Might's about to tell the kids to go back inside. And that's when the villain, this guy, holds out his fingertips. And sends out some lasers, right? And so he can shoot out these very, very powerful lasers. That could disintegrate you. And what happened was he had shot it at the teacher. And it had blew her arm off from the elbow down. And completely disintegrated it. So, All Might then shouted for all the students to come back inside. And that's when this villain blasted one at All Might and it cut a big cut in his shoulder, right? All Might dropped down to the ground, but then as he was standing up, the villain was about to fire another one at him. And that's when all the noise stopped. Nobody could hear a thing. Everyone was blinded by a very bright light. Or so bright that they couldn't see for a little bit. And as they couldn't see, their hearing started to come back, and it slowly started to become ringing. The ringing eventually faded, and they eventually got eyesight back. And they seen Deku standing there holding out his hand. And it was pointing out where the villains were. All that was left of him were nothing, just charred shadows, nuclear shadows on the ground of where they once were. And Bakugo's little brother was standing just in front of Izuku. So if you don't know, Izuku just killed all the villains. And so what happened was the villains had killed Bakugo's brother with a laser. But this happened right before Deku blasted them. Because Deku only blasted them because they had killed Bakugo's brother. And Bakugo and Deku were friends in this one. So to everyone, it just basically looked like Deku had killed the villains and Bakugo's brother. When in reality, it was the villains that killed Bakugo's brother. And Deku just killed the villains. But also, Deku had blasted dozens of cars into nothingness, as well as some buildings. The only casualties were the villains. Everyone else got out just slightly injured. The only people who were able to see that Deku didn't kill Bakugo's brother were his sister Rachel and All Might. The police come and everything, and then they're told about what Deku did by the teacher as well. The teacher also thought that Deku had killed this innocent child. So then the police come and take Deku, not to arrest him, but just to ask him some questions about what happened. Deku explains that they had just killed him, right? But that they had killed him. That's why Deku blasted them. Cops didn't believe it, right? And so some officials were called in. These officials came to look at Deku. And then they had his Quirk checked out, right? And they just seen the deadliness and potential danger in it. And so they called in the Japanese government. Japanese government was deciding on what to do when a certain branch of the Japanese government chimed up. What they said was that they would take care of Deku. So what they were the research and development of like atomic weapons and things like that. And so they took Deku also. Deku did have green hair, but after he used his quirk, his hair turned completely white. So, then the government gives them full control to take over Izuku Midoriya. They then do that, forcefully taking him from his home one day, right? Inko was horribly distraught, so was Hisashi. Rachel was at school during that. Everyone bullied Rachel because they called her brother a killer and things like that. Bakugo fucking absolutely hated Deku. He swore that if he ever saw Deku again, he would kill him. So the government takes Deku to this underground facility. It's about 2,500 meters underground. And that's usually the depth where they test nuclear bombs. And so, for the next, I'm going to say 10 years, next 4 years, Deku is experimented on. Quirk tested and everything. Blood IVs, introduction of newer things such as certain types of radiation, left with just isotopes, holding isotopes, what he can do. And he had to be moved to a facility that was a mile underground, which, is extremely deep. Reason why was because the facility he was at, he had a meltdown in. And they had given him a quirk-enhancing drug just to see what he can do. And one of the researchers got pissed off with Deku and said something and caused him to have a meltdown. Decimating the entire facility, leaving only a few survivors. They had to dig up the ruins of the facility just to get to Deku, praying that he was still alive. He was. So they moved into this new facility, a mile underground. So Deku was a mile underground now. And he's got a few tattoos. Mainly he's got a barcode on his right bicep. Not on his right bicep, on his right shoulder. Front of his right shoulder. And he's just got this slight sleeve going down. This snake dragon sleeve. The reason why is because they wanted to see what he would do with tattoos. So they just got a tattoo artist, and who they just said, give the kid whatever design you want. And so the tattoo artist gave him a small snake tattoo on the back of his shoulder. Well, uranium came up, right, and started to heal his skin, completely making the tattoo go away. Right, and this turns out that Deku can also heal with the radiation, with the uranium. So then they wanted to see what he could do, right? And so they figured out that certain colors and stuff could not be taken away. And depending on what it was and how much was used, it could not get rid of the ink, right? And so they just told the guy, go wild, and give him the big tattoo as well. So he did it. So he did give Deku a big tattoo. It was a snake sleeve. It goes down to his wrist and on his hands. It was like, it had a bunch of extravagant colors, but most of the extravagant colors were like completely removed because of the uranium. And it only left certain colors, and it left a super cool pattern and design on his arm with the sleeve as well. And they also did run experiments on how much regeneration he could have. So they would, how they did this was that they would have a team on standby, and the second that thing went wrong, they would run in there and save his life. So what they did was they had strapped Deku down to a chair, used Quirk erasing tape, right, and then slit his wrist to see if he could heal. And he healed in time. He healed within 5 seconds. So they would just do all these horrible experiments on him for years. IV drips going out of him during certain surgeries. Body was covered in scars that just couldn't heal. He was highly resistant to heat. So, Todoroki's fire would not do a damn thing to Deku. The only fire that could do a single thing to Deku would be Rachel's fire. But even then, that's barely anything compared to him. Compared to his fire. So we're going to go ahead and skip to when Deku's 14. He lives in this padded room, completely padded. And beneath that, they got 16 feet of solid lead. And then behind that is 10 feet of titanium, steel, and every strongest materials you can imagine. And Deku's got a TV in there. This TV does not play a whole lot. It just plays up certain messages and things like that. Deku's got a mattress with a pillow. And some blankets. He's got a shower and a toilet. And he's got small things. He's got mainly just I guess mainly just like puzzles to solve, and things like I guess just small tiny action figures. So that way he has something to pass the time with. Most of the time he doesn't do anything. And they wanted to see what Deku could do by mixing his quirk with other DNA. So they used his DNA, and they mixed it with the DNA of some other people. So I guess technically Deku does have 2 biological kids. But, he's still a virgin. So one of the quirks that they mixed him with was forgot what I was going to make for this. I guess it was just a pure radiation quirk, right? And Deku and this kid could not release any plutonium. He did not have uranium, but instead he can emit this radiation from his body, pure radiation, radioactive fallout or whatever. That this kid could then ignite. So by the time Deku is 14, this kid is 4, and it's a girl, so I guess he has a daughter, and he has a 2-year-old girl as well, who can make explosions, but instead of using plutonium and splitting the atom, she uses just uranium and just releases the energy from her hands. Her quirk was mixed with a stockpile quirk that just mainly saved up energy and released it. Like just natural energy that the body would build up. But they don't know what her quirk could be yet because she's only 2 and she hasn't showed any signs. Deku has never interacted with either of them. He knows it. Well, he has one time. Twice, I guess. He's not allowed to anymore because the first time he just got kind of sad, and the second time he almost had a meltdown. So they don't know what to do. So they just don't let him. So he's just not allowed to see the two children anymore. So this is just a massive underground facility with the utmost security that Deku is living in. And they have very select people to call if something goes wrong. These people are Aizawa, Midnight, and All Might, the number one hero from America, the number one hero from Canada, the number one hero from Germany, and the number one hero from Britain. Guessing on did I just say Britain? Sorry. I don't know why. I meant Ireland. Yeah, he got an Irish bastard in there. Why Midnight and Aizawa? Well, if Aizawa were to use his quirk to erase Deku's quirk while he was having a meltdown, the second Aizawa would blink, he would have an instant meltdown because his quirk would come back with all that energy. So they use Midnight and Aizawa for this. Though they have never met each other, they have figured it out that so the best way to deal with Deku with a meltdown is to either let him go it off, or they estimate that having Aizawa erase his quirk and Midnight making him fall asleep would then stop him from having a meltdown. So you could stall Deku from. So you can either just let Deku go off and blast. You can put him to sleep, and as long as you do it at the perfect timing, he won't explode. And he'll just release the energy while he's asleep safely. Or you can just use Aizawa to temporarily stall it before he just explodes. So then a villainous group got a hold of this information that they were keeping some sort of top secret, highly dangerous and deadly weapon down there. And they got word that it was actually a person that was kept in this gigantic underground area. And so they figured that this person must have a super strong quirk, and that they would want to recruit this person. So, they set up an attack. Who's going to be in this attack, you might ask? Well, it's going to be All For One, Shigaraki, the top 3 villains from America, and the top 5 villains from Russia. We're going to attack. And so they do. They get through good and well, right? And they break down. They break down into the secret underground area. They ride this little lift downwards. And while they're walking, right, there's this security guard. He has an electrical attack, right? So he goes to attack All For One, alright? All For One just simply grabs his head and immediately takes his quirk. All For One then breaks the guy's neck, throwing him into a wall. I'm going to say after the All Might fight, All For One did not need to have a rebreather to breathe. Or that thing, the respirator, sorry. Not a rebreather. So he didn't need that to breathe anymore. So he then has an electrical quirk, right, and he just sends out a surge, which disables Deku's locks. Deku in his room, right? So Deku just walks out. And then the security guard sees Deku out of his cell. He then immediately draws his gun and shoots Deku right in the chest. All the villains hear a loud boom as flames erupt from a hallway. Green flames, right? They can then tell that there was radiation there. So what happened was Deku had sent off a blast. He controlled it so it wouldn't decimate the facility again. And it killed this guy, leaving a charred skeleton and very little flesh on it. Deku then starts walking down the hallway, right? And he bumps into All For One directly. Deku then immediately crawls backwards and stands back up. All For One then starts asking questions to Deku like, "What is your name, kid?" And he goes, "Zuko Midoriya." He says, "How old are you, Zuko Midoriya?" Zuko then says, "I'm 14. And then All For One then asks, "How long have you been living here?" Deku goes, "For the past 4 years. I used to be at a different facility, but I blew that one up." And then All For One asks Deku what his quirk is. Deku then says, "I can create atomic blasts, I guess you could say." All For One then goes, thinks to himself, "God damn, those guys are powerful quirk. I doubt if we do it." And he thinks to himself, "If we make this kid mad, he can kill all of us." So he walks up to Deku and sticks out of his hand and says, "We're the League of Villains, and we'd like to break you out of this poor place." And he says, "So, we would like you to join us. We will make sure you get a good life and things that you want, as long as in return you help us," right? Him just thinking that Deku might not be that, thinking Deku's not smart because Deku has it, because from the looks of it, they've kept him here in just a facility since he was 4. Well, it's the exact opposite. Deku is about as smart as Einstein right now. Deku, knowing that these are very bad people, they probably only want him for his quirk, he sticks out his hand and says, "Okay." All For One then shakes his hand. And then All For One's eyes narrow onto Deku as Deku smirks. Boom! Deku blows off All For One's right arm. All For One then falls backwards into some of the other villains, screaming in pain. He then goes, "Kill that little shit." Deku then chuckles as he throws up a bunch of liquid uranium that's on fire, and it goes all over the villains. And a bunch of it lands on All For One's chest, and it just melts through his chest, burning his lungs, and it melts into his lungs. He then throws himself forward, getting all the burning uranium out, and he's just barely being kept alive because of a regeneration quirk he has. Deku then starts using fire to set all the villains on fire. Luckily, though, for the villains, none of them got killed. They had to immediately leave. And then All For One's arm was left there. Well, what little of it was left, like a bicep, was left. That was all. 4-1. So Deku then goes, "Oh, well, those guys are taken care of." He just starts roaming the hallways thinking, "I've never seen any of this." He then finds an old record room, and he blows off that lock on the door using a small explosion. He opens up the door, walks in, starts looking through all the records. And he finds one called Experiments, and he pulls it out and looks at it, and it shows that it's VHS. He goes, "This will be interesting to watch." And so he starts looking around, and he sees a security office. And then there's a guy in there with headphones on, a security guy, just sitting there watching some videos on his phone, not at all paying attention. He didn't hear any of this. He has some of those noise canceling shit. He's the worst security guard you can imagine. Deku then looks around and notices that they have for some reason, a VHS player. Makes no sense because, like, they're so far in the future. Why would they use VHS? But, like, he doesn't question it. The reason why is so that way they could always have... Right now, Midnight standing right next to him. Right, and they're just overlooking the field of everyone, right? Midnight's asking Deku, hey, what do you think of UA? Deku goes, it's a nice place. Better than where I was before. A lot less experiments, no more IVs. And God, thank God, no more needles. He shivers a little bit and goes, I absolutely hate needles. He says, also, the staff here aren't absolute assholes like they were at the other place. Midnight laughs, says, yeah. So Midnight is thinking, that guy's so lucky he gets to be next to Midnight. And so, Denki also thinks something similar. The girls are slightly not really scared, but they're nervous about him. Like, what is this Quirk? Why can't he join in, right? So, after a while, the student's training. And he's got an idea. His idea is to let everyone get, like, away from the training area so Deku can show off some of his moves. So Aizawa says this to all the students, saying, alright, points to a certain area away from the training area and says, go stand over there. Like, okay, this is strange. Aizawa walks up to Midnight, right, and they walk down Deku. They all get a much closer look at Deku. He's kind of tall, he's extremely tall. Right, and he walks up, and he asks Midnight and Aizawa, hey, do I still have to wear the mask? It's kind of stuffy in here. Aizawa goes, sure. Deku pulls off the mask and puts down his hood. And puts the mask on in his pocket. Nah, not in his pocket. He throws it on the ground. Bakugo, you can't really even make out Deku's face. So Bakugo doesn't know that it's Deku. And vice versa. They don't know who who each other is. So Aizawa says, I want you to show off what you can do, Deku. Deku goes, alright, and pulls off his gloves, puts them in his pocket. Hands him this ball, right? Deku goes, alright, leans back. And throws it without using his quirk, right? And he goes, I'm going to say 100 meters. Aizawa goes, well, that's pretty impressive, but use your quirk. Deku goes, alright. He looks at the ball and he goes, I hope I don't blow it up. And he leans back. Boom! A massive explosion rings out of a green blast. Nobody really got to see so everyone who was there at the time didn't really get to see what Deku's explosions look like. Other than All Might and Deku himself. Rachel is currently... What? Rachel's not here because of, she's got some family issues going on. She's not going to be there for a couple days. Yeah. That's what I'm going to go with. So, Bakugo then starts having kind of flashbacks of what happened to his brother. How he thinks his brother was killed by Deku. He goes... Just kind of have heavy breathing and Kirishima. Bakugo does not call Kirishima shitty hair or anything. He just calls him bro and stuff, and they're like really good friends. And Kirishima says, bro, what's wrong, man? And Bakugo says, nothing, man. He just kind of reminded me of someone I used to know. Kirishima goes, oh, alright. And... For the 50-meter sprint, right, Deku uses explosions again, this time causing a big hole in the ground where the start line was. Cross the finish line, half a second. He literally had to use explosions forward to stop him from hitting the ground and causing a crater. He was then, saved from completely becoming a seed in the ground. And so he just wanted, so they tested him on a whole bunch of other stuff and recorded Deku's score. Deku got the top score in everything except for the side to side. He tried to use explosions for that, but whenever he tried, it mainly just threw him off balance, and he kind of flung himself far away from the side to side area. So he got like 8th place in that. For the strength test, he got 4th place. For staying similar to that, he got around 3rd to 4th place. Most things else, though, he got 1st place in. Deku's then told to put his gloves back on. So Deku puts his gloves back on, puts on his mask, throws his hood back up. They then walk Deku away. Not like far away this time. They then call down all the students. All the students get up close, and then they just see how tall Deku is. Deku's about 15 feet away, and they just see this hulking behemoth of a man. Aizawa then shows them all what Deku's current scores are. How he has beat everyone except for Shoji. I'm going to say Mineta got 1st in the side to side. So he beat everyone except for Shoji, Mineta, and a few other people. Then Bakugo. Bakugo just calls him, then just kind of thinks, probably a fucking nerd or whatever. I don't see why the hell he can't be in this fucking same class with this. But whatever. I'm still stronger than him. I'm stronger than everyone else here. I'm the best. So then after that, Aizawa then walks over to Deku and says, "Alright, time to go back." Deku then just nods and says, "Alright, Aizawa, lead the way." Aizawa walks forward. Midnight, right, following beside Deku. I'm going to say in this one, Midnight is going to be aged down a bunch. To the point where she is the youngest pro hero. I'm going to say that she is 20. Yeah, she's 20. Midnight is 20, which makes her 6 years older than Deku. Deku is of current legal age in Japan, so technically, they could be fucking, but they ain't gonna be fucking. So they lead Deku back up to his room. The rest of the class is then told to come in, right? Things go the same. And also, they all know about how Deku killed, I'm doing quotes, killed Bakugo's brother. Right, and so one day, so the next day it's time for the USJ thing. Bakugo got into broke his arm and leg, I don't know, you can imagine, at his house helping his mom with something. And so he had to go to the hospital. Do not try to say hospital slowly, or else you just sound stupid, like I did. If you don't, okay, so I'm making up a bunch of excuses for why nobody can get a good look at Deku. So they then tell Deku that he can come with them to the USJ event, right? So, but he has to wear his mask and gloves, and he has to be on excellent behavior. Otherwise, he's not allowed to do anything like that for a year. So they get to the USJ. They didn't tell everyone that Deku's gonna be joining. But they don't call him Deku or anything. Huh, what should they call him? I'm gonna say they're gonna give him a fake name. Instead of Izuku Midoriya, it's gonna be him, what should his name be? His fake name, I don't really know. I'm not good with coming up with fake names that aren't American. No, I'm just gonna give him, I'm gonna give him an American name. It's gonna make him sound like he's a transfer student, not just someone who's born in Japan. Kind of throw people off. I guess just freaking Jackson Nicholas. Nah, that sounds too stupid. Jackson Smith. Fuck it. That's gonna be Deku's fake name, so that way they can just pass him off as a student who came from America or whatever. And so that way it didn't really throw off Bakugo from telling that Deku is Deku. And so they finally just decided to tell the class what his name is. And they're like, oh, that sounds very American. They're all like, and Aizawa goes, yes, he's from America. And he makes up a very quick fake story that the class believes about where he came from and everything. So they then tell Deku this fake story, and Deku's got to keep it up. And that his name is not Izuku Midoriya around them, and his name is Jackson Smith. So Deku walks down in his green hoodie, mask, gloves, jeans, and Vans. Midnight walking beside him. Deku sits down on the bus. Midnight sits down next to him. Right? And on the bus beside Midnight is Denki. And then beside Denki is Jiro. Beside Deku is nobody. There's just a blank seat beside him. Nobody wants to sit directly beside him. And then right next to the blank seat is Kirishima. And then Mina. Right, so Deku is just sitting there. Not really saying it, not really saying too much. When he's talked to by Midnight, he'll start talking. I'm gonna say that Midnight and Deku have a little bit of a chit-chat conversation. Small conversations. Nothing that you would really care about. So after Midnight and Deku get to talking, Kirishima asks Deku, hey man, what's your quirk? Deku goes, oh, I can cause blasts, I can cause explosions. And Kirishima goes, oh, that's a lot like Katsuki, that's a lot like Bakugo's quirk. Deku then kind of freezes, going like, oh, fuck. He's here? He didn't get to know any of the names of the students in 1A. Midnight and Aizawa kind of look at Deku. And Deku goes, oh, well, that's cool. What's his quirk? And Kirishima goes, oh, he can just make explosions. So what's the difference between yours and his? And Deku goes, I use mine by minor, except I guess mine are just atomic. I basically make atomic bombs. Atomic blasts from my hands. Kirishima goes, oh man, that's so cool. And so manly. Deku says, oh, really? Huh. Well, thanks. What's your quirk? And Kirishima goes, oh, I just get a hard-on when I'm about to get into a fight. No, he says I can just harden and strengthen up myself. Shows it off and stuff. And so they talk the rest of the way there. Him and Kirishima have a friendly conversation. They get there, they're all told to get off the bus. Deku gets off and everything. And so they walk in. The Hero 13 does the whole thing. Uraraka, or whoever recognizes her. Also, for the Heroes vs. Villains, Deku wasn't there for that. Because, that happened before while he was still in the facility. for Deku's place in that whole heroes versus villain thing, that was replaced by Rachel. Bakugo is also especially addicted to Rachel. He makes it a personal goal of his to make Rachel's life a living hell for being related to Deku. Deku doesn't know this because he hasn't met Rachel yet, because she's still having family business or issues going on. So they get there, right, and then Kirishima says the whole thing about, hey, look, they even got fake villains. Aizawa, says that those aren't fake or whatever. Aizawa jumps down and rushes at the villains while telling 13 to protect him. Kirigiri pops up, does the whole portal shit, right? And Deku got teleported onto the boat with Mineta and Sue. Midnight decided to go down and help Aizawa fight off the villains by, just using fist fight. Because I'm going to say Midnight is very good at fist fighting. So Sue asks, what are we going to do? Deku then goes, oh, I know. And then they say, what? Deku picks up Mineta, throws him on his back, and picks up Sue. Tells her to hold on. So Sue grabs onto his neck, right? Deku just jumps off the boat using his explosion, he just blasted off his gloves. Boom, 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 causing these green explosions. Carrying him perfectly safely over all the water. And then they land outside the water. All water villains are like, oh, god damn it. Sue goes, oh, well, that was easy. Deku kind of removes what little pieces of gloves are left. And Sue can kind of see the tattoo that comes out onto his hand. So, right after that, they get encountered by some villains. Mineta holds them down, Sue kind of kicks them. Deku uses very low-powered blasts to blast them away, and then for some of the tougher ones, he uses his fire. Mineta's like, cool, you could use fire too, man? That's cool. Kind of like Todoroki. Deku goes, what's Todoroki's quirk? Mineta says, oh, he can shoot out ice from his right side and fire from his left. Deku goes, oh, that's cool. And they're just having this casual conversation while fighting off all these villains. Deku then realizes that not only is Aizawa getting his ass beat, Midnight's kind of getting hurt. And he always had a soft spot for Midnight, because she was always the nicest out of all UA staff to him. So, Deku then just says, hey guys, get behind me. They get behind him, holds out his hands. Boom, uses a powerful blast to blast all the villains away. He then says to Sue, and he says, hey Sue, think you can get Deku, think you can get Mineta, points at Mineta. Says, think you can get him into safety while I go help out them? And Sue goes, are you sure? Deku looks at her, causes a small explosion in his hands, and goes, I'm pretty sure. Sue goes, alright then, picks up Mineta and carries him away. Deku then blasts his way down and lands on the crowd and starts blasting villains, right? And this tough villain who has this ability to turn his hands into hammers hits Midnight in the face, and Midnight goes spiraling backwards. She's about to hit her head on the ground when Deku, doing the reverse of what she did for him back at the facility, he runs over, catching her head just in time, right? He looks down and says, hey, Midnight. Midnight goes, hey. Deku goes, I got these guys, hold on. Sets her down and just goes, blah, boom, and lets off this big blast. All the villains get blasted away. Deku then sticks out his hand and helps Midnight up. Midnight goes, thanks, kid. Deku goes, no problem, and says, let's go help Aizawa. So they run over and they start beating the shit out of some villains, and then the Nomu comes out, right? Midnight tries to use her gas to knock the Nomu out. Doesn't do a thing. Nomu punches her away, right? And she's about to hit a wall when Deku uses explosions to get over there just in time to catch her. And then sits her down and says, I think I got this guy. For the second save, though, Midnight kind of blushed whenever Deku caught her. So Deku blasts his way back at the Nomu. Gets up to the Nomu, right, and kicks it in its jaw. Kind of getting it off of Aizawa. Deku then starts using explosions. to blast the Nomu away, but like they're not powerful enough to kill him because of the shock absorption. So Deku then says, alright then. He starts using fire, trying to burn the Nomu, and it does, it's burning the Nomu well. But he thinks, oh man, this isn't enough. So then he starts throwing out, so his arms, so he's basically becoming a flamethrower. Because the way a proper flamethrower works is that it doesn't just shoot off flames. Because if it did that, it wouldn't be as effective as it should be. How an actual flamethrower works is that it sprays out this liquid. This liquid gets ignited on this flame, and then while it's still liquid, while being on fire, it will land on someone. Sometimes it'll soak into their skin while burning, but most of the time it's meant to soak into their clothes. So Deku's shooting out this super melting hot liquid uranium, and it's just melting his Nomu's skin. He's having to brush off all this uranium before it melts through him completely. Right, and so Deku's just doing this, and then the Nomu grabs Deku's arms, pulling him out back sideways, almost breaking him. And then it leans back and it's about to headbutt Deku. That's when All Might says, I am here, while bursting through the doors. Deku looks up and shows Nomu. Deku thinks, oh, that's my chance. And he pukes up a bunch of this liquid uranium that melts straight through his mask. Hitting the Nomu's brain, the Nomu immediately lets go of Deku, starts having to smack this uranium out of his brain while his brain is melting. And it gets it out in time for it to still be alive, but it's even somehow dumber, and it's got restricted motor movements because of that, because of its brain being partially melted. A bunch of that uranium got spilled back onto Deku and completely, burnt off his entire sleeve on his arm, revealing his entire tattoo. Deku's mask was completely useless. It just had this big hole where his mouth and nose were. Nose wasn't, it was dribbling down, so it only covered, his right cheek and his eyes. Deku just ripped the mask off, threw it off. He then starts to, use explosions to battle around this Nomu, and All Might's like, God damn, I gotta go help that villain. Right? And so, All Might comes down and he starts to help, begrudgingly help Midoriya with the villain. Midnight's kind of looking at Deku thinking, he's kind of hot, right? And then she goes, wait, what am I thinking? I'm kidding. She's like, whoa, that is cool. Aizawa is currently on the ground. She goes, alright, Aizawa. And she runs over, gets Aizawa, and drags him back to safety. While All Might and Deku were beating the shit out of this villain. Deku and All Might just go all out, right? Nomu gets a few good hits in there, but mainly just dodging. But most of the time, Deku and All Might are dodging. So for one of the Nomu's attacks, it attacks Deku with this uppercut, right, with his right arm, and then while Deku jumped out of the way, while Deku was flying, the Nomu swung its arm around just in time to catch Deku, and it got a hold of Deku and slammed him into All Might, messing him with All Might's punches. Alright, this guy, All Might mad, says, God, just leave, you fucking brat. Leave, you brat. You no help here. Deku then says, alright, fine then. And he gets up and he throws All Might off of him and he just walks away, right? And leaves All Might to battle the Nomu by himself. And the Nomu, and they're just battling, and All Might is, and he starts to lose, right? And the Nomu's overpowering him. That's when Deku goes, hey, old man, you need any help? All Might goes, help, you fucking brat. Deku then goes, alright then. But say please next time, will you? Deku then blasts his way at the Nomu using explosions. And then, right before he hit the Nomu, he put his hands forward. The second he touched it, he used an extremely powerful blast that blew the Nomu in half, blowing its entire top off. He blew that bitch's top off. So the Nomu died, of course. Shigaraki goes, no fair, you cheated, no fair, and things like that, and is well pissed off. Deku then points at Shigaraki and goes, wait a second, hold on. And he thinks about it, and while pointing at Shigaraki, and goes, I remember you. Shigaraki's got these burns all across him. Shigaraki goes, wait. And then Shigaraki goes, little shit. And Deku goes, hand job? And Shigaraki goes, I should kill you for what happened. Deku goes, hey, not my fault. Not my fault, you're villains. And then he blasts Shigaraki. But Kirigiri put a portal right in front of Shigaraki, causing the blast to go back and hit Deku in the back. This didn't really do anything to Deku other than, like, send him forward. Deku was perfectly fine. And Shigaraki and them all got away. So I'm gonna leave it off there. By the time you see this, I will be part 2 of this what if will also be uploading. So alright guys, peace.